in about 5 seconds.
So, George, that bill isn't going to pass until tomorrow, but they're going to pass it tomorrow.
So we're sticking with withdraw then.
Yep.
Okay, you are good to go.
To call this special council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship.
Thank you. I will save my announcements for the council and committee meeting that's going to follow this meeting. There is no addendum to this special council meeting. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, then we're going to go to Councillor McDermott with respect to the motion that is the subject of the special council meeting. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. We request the province of Ontario to withdraw Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229, the Conservations Act. Whereas the province has introduced Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act, Schedule 6, Conservation Authorities Act. Whereas the legislation introduces a number of changes and new sections that could remove and or significantly hinder the conservation authorities' role in regulating development, permit appeal process, engaging in review and appeal of planning applications. Whereas we rely on the watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect residents, property, and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act. And whereas the changes allow the minister to make decisions without conservation authorities' watershed data and expertise. And whereas the legislation suggests that the minister will have the ability to establish standards and requirements for non-mandatory programs, which are negotiated between the conservation authorities and municipalities to meet local watershed needs. And whereas municipalities believe that the appointment of municipal representatives on conservation authority boards should be a municipal decision, and the chair and vice chair of the conservation authority board should be duly elected. And whereas the changes to the duty of members contradicts the fiduciary duty of a conservation authority board member to represent the best interests of the conservation authority and its responsibility to the watershed. And whereas conservation authorities have already been working with the province, development sector, and municipalities to streamline and speed up permitting and planning approvals to Conservation Ontario's Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. And whereas changes to the legislation will create more red tape and costs for the conservation authorities and their municipal partners, and potentially result in delays in the development approval process. And whereas municipalities value and rely on the natural habitats and water resources within our jurisdiction for the health and well-being of residents, municipalities value the conservation authorities' work to prevent and manage the impacts of flooding and other natural hazards. And municipalities value the conservation authority work to ensure safe drinking water. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the province of Ontario withdraw Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229, and further, that the province continues to work with conservation authorities to find workable solutions to reduce red tape and create conditions for growth. And further, that the province respects the current conservation authority municipal relationship. And further, the province embraces their long-standing partnership with the conservation authorities and provides them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role. And further, that a copy of this resolution be circulated to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Finance, Auditor General, Partner Municipalities, Region of Niagara, Conservation Ontario, and Graydon Smith, President of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Did you want to also send a copy of this to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
And I'm going to allow you to speak to this since I know you wish to. The reason we're holding the special council meeting and dealing with this tonight is because my understanding is that the bill was debated today, may still be debated today, and is going to be presumably passed tomorrow. So it's timely that we try to deal with this evening. Councillor McDermott?
Thank you, Your Worship. Number one, I really take offense to the province of Ontario and doing what they're doing and putting this in a very big, nice package of an omnibus bill rather than deal with this thing directly. It just insults the intelligence of the municipal councils, regional councils, politicians throughout this province when we're allowed to do things like that. It can never get to the meat of the act. I know that this legislation has been support or against this legislation throughout Niagara. I can't remember one that would believe that this is the right thing to do. Protecting the green belt is, at the top of our list. And if I remember it correctly, during the election campaign, the provincial election campaign, there was a time when, the premier said he would never do this. Yet this is where we're at. So there's just a couple of things that I want to speak to, and that is about the appointments to the board. I think we finally turned a corner with the NPCA. And why is that? It's because the political will of the people throughout Niagara felt that the NPCA's role over the past 4 years was nothing but trouble. And they were probably correct. And now we have a board that has representative of the full community. We have almost like Ed Smith and Leah Fiora on there. You know that that's their interest and this is what they're there for. Yet we want to supplement with elected officials, and I suggest I don't agree with that because I think that's what got us in trouble in the first place. But I appreciate the work that the NPCA has done up to this point. And just kind of go back to one thing where I think line 3 says it all. We rely on the watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect residents, property, and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act. I think that's the most important thing that people should recognize. And that's why we're here at this special meeting tonight. Because I think pretty much all of us will have something to say about this because I think it's just not the right thing to do. And it's certainly a travesty on what people are trying to do with regards to environmental things in this province. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just briefly, without going into the other portions of it, the one that jumps out to me and that makes me wonder what's the intent here and what's the end game with what the province is doing is the duty of members portion. My understanding has always been that if you have a board of directors or a municipal council or anything along those lines, that your duty is to the organization that you are representing on that board. And it just seems so counterintuitive to appoint municipal officials to this board, which is now the intent is a requirement. And then for they're supposed to represent the municipality's interest rather than the interest of the Conservation Authority. So what's the intent here? Is the intent to gut their work by proxy, by having municipalities? It doesn't make sense to me. And we're in the middle of pandemic. It's, we always run into situations, crisis politics and everything else. Sometimes it's easy to just slide something underneath and, because we're all wrapped up in other things that are very, very important at this time. And I just think this was untimely and just does not make sense to me. So I'm glad Councillor McDermott brought this forward. I'm enthusiastically supporting this tonight. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Anyone else wish to address this? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm concerned also regarding this. One of the things that I recall with the NPCA is that there have been many times we've had very, very experienced, non-elected individuals that come with a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information, and have been on the NPCA for many years and can kind of see how it evolves, knows the past history, and knows a lot about conservation. And you're going to lose those individuals if this passes, simply because of the nature of how it's put about having to be elected representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Sorry, Madam Clerk.
May we have a seconder for this motion?
I'm sorry, I thought, I
Yes,
didn't catch that. I was going to
Councillor
ask.
Butler.
Thank you.
We shouldn't have gotten this far, and I missed you. You were probably frantically waving, Madam Clerk. I apologize. Okay, if there isn't going to be anyone else, Madam Clerk, I'd like a recorded vote on this.
Councillor Lubberts,
I think he's frozen.
Yes.
Councillor McDermott,
Yes.
Councillor Butler,
Yes.
Councillor Zanko,
Yes.
Councillor Dubanow,
Yes.
Councillor Noyes,
Yes.
Mayor Redekop.
Yes.
Carried, Your Worship.
Thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor McDermott, and thank you all members of council for supporting this. And at least we will be on record as letting the province know that we support the work of the conservation authorities. Okay, that takes us to consideration of bylaws. Councillor Butler, you have first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes. Thank you. I'm wondering if Councillor Dubanow can second the motion for me, or second the resolution for me. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow. Consideration of bylaw to confirm the actions of council at its special meeting held on December 7th, 2020. That bylaw number 119-2020 to confirm the actions of council at its special meeting held on December 7th, 2020 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you had third and final reading of the confirmatory
Yes,
bylaw,
I need a seconder.
seconded by Councillor Zanko.
Consideration of bylaw to confirm the actions of council, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Zanko, to confirm the actions of council at a special meeting held on December 7th, 2020. That bylaw number 119-2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And that takes us to the adjournment. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council adjourns at 6:15 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on December 14th, 2020.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So that then gets us to the next order of business, and I'm going to call the council and committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
We don't have an addendum this evening. A couple of announcements. The first one relates to the work of the volunteer fire department over the last several weeks. The members of stations 2, 3, 4, and 5 at various events have been collecting food and toys, donations from the community for the community. And the latest event was this weekend at Joe's Value Mart. That was station 4. Throughout the events, there have been 8 pickup trucks of food and toys and cash donations exceeding $5,200 generated through the efforts of our volunteer firefighters and the generosity of the members of our community, all of which will go, of course, to help those who are in need. This is in addition to the October food drive that was conducted by the Public Education and Suppression Divisions together, allowing our food banks and social service providers to realize much needed resources to our residents. So on behalf of council, I'm sure, we want to thank Chief, you and all of your volunteer firefighters and your professional staff, because I know they also participated in this. So thank you very much. Second thing I wanted to do was give a bit of an update to the community with respect to COVID-19 again, and maybe create a little bit of a perspective here. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Fort Erie has experienced 145 recorded cases of COVID-19. That number is proportionate to the incidence of cases throughout Niagara, putting Fort Erie in 6th place among municipalities on the basis of cases per 10,000 residents. As of August the 20th, 2020, Fort Erie had 26 cases. Then the number of cases began to rise. And since October the 22nd, 2020, the number of cases has more than doubled. A large number of those cases were experienced at Gilmore Lodge, where the infection of residents and staff accounts for more than a quarter of Fort Erie's total number of cases. There have been other larger outbreaks that have also added to that total. It is believed that one person brought the infection into Gilmore Lodge. Other outbreaks can be traced to individuals who brought the viruses to their families or friends. I don't believe for 1 minute that a worker or a visitor to Gilmore Lodge intended to spread the virus to residents and staff. Nor do I believe that a student or worker intended to affect his or her parents or siblings or friends, or that someone with the virus intended to infect a healthcare worker. But that is what is happening. It is happening everywhere, not just in Fort Erie. But Fort Erie is where we can have an impact. The messages emanating from public health authorities and medical specialists have been clear and consistent. We can recite the mantra in our sleep. Wash your hands, wear a mask, physical distance, don't go out if you are ill, limit your outings. The vast majority of people continue to heed the messages. For some reason, there is still a segment of our community that doesn't feel the need or the responsibility to do the things necessary to protect those around them. Very few people consider themselves to be selfish or inconsiderate or careless. But if you are not doing everything that you can to protect those around you, especially the elderly, the vulnerable, those who have difficulty protecting themselves, how would you describe yourself? Some of you need an attitude adjustment. I'm pleading with you to step up and do your part to constrain the spread of COVID-19. By all accounts, this virus is going to continue to spread, even if we take all of the precautions available seriously. We cannot rely on good luck. We cannot rely on the vaccines to save us, at least not yet. And we cannot rely on others to do what we can do ourselves. Christmas is upon us. This is a time of generosity, selflessness, charity, and goodwill. Let's do everything we can to help others, including businesses and nonprofit organizations. Most especially, let's do everything we can to keep each other safe. Okay. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, there's one notice of public meetings, and those relate to the budget schedule. We have a meeting this week, December the 9th, which will deal with water and wastewater operating budget and user fees analysis. We have a third budget meeting scheduled for February the 3rd, 2021, which will deal with the library, the general levy operating budget and assessment analysis. If there's a fourth meeting necessary, we'll have that on Wednesday, February the 10th, 2021. All of these meetings begin at 6 p.m. They're accessible via video or teleconference. Budget bylaws are scheduled for Monday, December the 14th, which will deal with the preliminary capital budget bylaw. On Monday, January the 18th, 2021, we'll be dealing with the water and wastewater budget and rates bylaw. And on February the 22nd, 2021, if we get through all of those other meetings, we'll be dealing with the general levy budget bylaw and the general capital budget bylaw. This evening, we have a couple of public meetings, and my cheat sheets are behind my computer. Excuse me. Got it. Nope. Sorry about this. This is reality television, I guess. It's maybe at its worst. Before we go there, I should state that I also missed the land acknowledgement. And so this meeting that we take, I want to acknowledge, is from our various places taking place on the land, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas, and the Anishinaabe people. So the public meetings, the format, this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube and also recorded for public viewing on the town's website. To those members of the public who may be participating electronically in the public meeting portion of this meeting tonight, you may wish to put your view on gallery view by clicking the top right corner from speaker view, and on an iPad, it might be in your top left corner. I also ask you to be mindful of background noise. So during the meeting, you should have your device on mute, and it will be muted in any event until you come into the meeting. Please also note that participating members of the public will remain in the virtual waiting room via telephone or electronically until they are called upon during the public meeting. And is this being managed by you, Mr. Butler? You're managing the public meetings?
Yes.
Okay. So members of council have been provided with any written comments received by the clerk prior to this meeting. Those participating online via Zoom will be asked to raise their virtual hand when they wish to speak. On a computer, you can do so by clicking on participants in the bottom center of the screen and then by clicking raise hand. On a mobile device, you can tap raise hand in the bottom left corner. If you're utilizing an iPad, it may be in the top right corner. You would click on participants and then the raise hand icon. Then you will be called upon to speak and your microphone and video will be enabled by staff. If you are participating by phone and you wish to raise your hand, press *9 and you will be unmuted by staff. So these public meetings are pursuant to the Planning Act, and the general routine is I will ask a member of staff to provide a background information relative to the subject matter of the public meeting. We'll then ask the clerk to read into the minutes any correspondence she may have received after the information report or recommendation report was received. I'll ask staff if there are any members of the public in the waiting room who wish to speak in favor of the applicant. That will be after we give the applicant an opportunity to speak. And then finally, I'll ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application or have questions that they wish to raise with council. So the first public meeting relates to the town's proposed official plan housekeeping amendment. And this is a presentation that's going to be made by Lindsay Richardson. Good evening, Ms. Richardson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening. I am going to share my screen now, hopefully. There we go. There we go, and hopefully everyone can see that. Again, thank you, and good evening to you, Mr. Mayor, as well as the other members of council, staff, and members of the public. As the mayor alluded, my name is Lindsay Richardson, and I'm the senior community planner with the town of Fort Erie. Tonight's public meeting is being held with regards to a town-initiated housekeeping amendment to our official plan, and this presentation has been prepared to provide council and the public with information on the proposed changes. So just a brief overview of the amendment. Staff is proposing changes to both the policy, which is the text portion of the official plan, and the land use map, Schedule A. The policy amendment is being proposed in response to several land use inquiries that have been made from property owners in the past couple of years in both the agricultural and rural areas, that were not in keeping with the existing secondary use policies in the official plan and were therefore not permitted. Staff undertook a best practices review and determined that by defining and permitting value-added uses in the official plan for both of those designations, it would provide landowners with greater land use flexibility. The mapping amendment is being proposed based on the final environmental conservation area assessment report, which was prepared by LCA Environmental for lands within the town's industrial district. This report was approved by council in November of 2019. And the study reviewed the current hydrogeological and ecological conditions on a number of different properties with regard to current regional and provincial policies, reevaluated the natural features on each site, assessing their significance, and once completed, provided a summary of results of the study work and updated mapping of the feature boundaries. So this amendment is just being made to update our official plan mapping to reflect the mapping results of that study. So the purpose of the amendment, the policy amendment is really just to improve and clarify the existing policies that are around secondary agricultural uses. In terms of the mapping, we're just looking to update the natural heritage mapping to reflect current on-the-ground conditions in specific study locations that were approved previously. And additionally, the mapping change, the purpose of that is to permit further development in some locations where environmental protection or conservation layers are proposed to be removed, and to restrict future development in locations where that environmental protection layer has been added, again, to address current conditions on those particular sites. So specifically, in terms of the actual policy amendment, staff is proposing to include value-added uses into sections 451 and 452 of the agricultural section and section 4.6 of the rural section of the official plan. Additionally, a new definition for value-added is being proposed for inclusion in the glossary of terms, which is Appendix A to the official plan. And so value-added, the definition that we're proposing is to be generally defined as uses that occur on farm, which add value to agricultural products, and their sale and distribution are intended to promote and sustain the viability of farming operations. These uses are intended to be small in scale and specifically related to the farm activity on site. We've also sort of grouped them into three major components: production uses. So basically the processing of agricultural products, wineries, bakeries, cheese factories. Marketing, which is methods of increasing the sale of raw or finished product. And so that's looking at things like roadside produce stands, pick your own facilities, or agritourism uses such as farm weddings, farm mazes, and other uses such as working farm vacations or culinary schools. And then finally, we're looking at support uses, which are essentially just uses that support the day-to-day farm operations. So things like machinery repairs and seed suppliers. In terms of the mapping amendment, as it was sort of briefly discussed, staff reviewed the recommendations of the 2019 Environmental Conservation Area Assessment Report and are proposing the updated mapping to the plan based on the recommendations of that work. So with this particular amendment, there's 30 sites that were identified, and we're looking at either removing the environmental conservation layer and or environmental protection layer, or adding it where the conditions are right for that. And so basically the changes that are being proposed are based on extensive assessment and evaluation of these lands, which occurred in 2018 and 2019. And the report was completed based on current field data and with regard to all relevant provincial, regional, and municipal policies. I'm just going to go through a really brief example of sort of the assessment that we did for each particular site. And so what we did is we looked at the natural areas, we looked at the 7 natural areas designation criteria that are identified in our official plan. And so these criteria include designated environmental areas, hydrological importance, site condition, habitat diversity, special features, representation, and socioeconomic value. And so each site was was assessed based on these 7 criteria. And so just an example of what we did. So this was done for each site. So the example in this case is at 0 Bowen Road, and it's the property that's sort of at the top left of the screen that's highlighted in red. And so the recommendation in this case was the removal of all of the EC layer from the property. And the basis for this was that only 2 of the 7 criteria were fulfilled. and the site did not qualify as a locally significant natural area. Additionally, there was a high degree of disturbance on the site and many non-native species were present. It was determined based on all of this review and criteria that the natural area did not provide significant ecological function, and therefore the EC overlay on that property could be removed. And so again, this analysis was undertaken for each individual property as part of the study, and that analysis is attached to your report and to the official plan amendment bylaw. All right, so in terms of the public input, we hosted an open house on October 2nd, October 6th, from 5 to 7 with town staff in attendance. We had 2 members of the public that did attend and did express support for the amendment, specifically with respect to the inclusion of value added in the agricultural designation and the proposed definition for these uses. Additionally, staff met virtually with the town's environmental advisory committee just last week to review the mapping changes that are being proposed. The committee will be providing any comments they may have to staff by mid-January, and any feedback received will be included in the final recommendation report to council. And so finally, just a brief timeline to sort of let you know where we started and where we're headed. We're sort of at the dark blue dot there at the public meeting and information report to council. So what will happen next steps is we will take the information and the feedback that we receive from this meeting and any further comments that we receive from the public. And then following the incorporation of any of that input, a recommendation report is tentatively scheduled for February 2021. And if approved, a bylaw would follow with the necessary notice of decision would be circulated after that. So if no appeals are received and everything sort of goes according to plan, we're probably looking at the amendments coming into effect late in March of next year. And that is it for me. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your time, and I welcome any questions or comments that anyone may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richardson. Before I go to members of council, 2 questions. Number 1, 30 properties to be reviewed by EAC seems like a lot within 5 weeks. Any comment on that?
Sure. So staff and the consulting team actually met with EAC as part of the original environmental conservation area assessment stuff that we did. So that we met with them back in October. It was October 9th in 2019. To review those final results of that particular study, and the committee had no comments or concerns at that time. So what we're doing with this amendment is we're literally taking the mapping that was done then and updating our OP to reflect that mapping. So we're kind of hoping that this is just a kind of secondary review for them, that they've already kind of done their homework from 2019 when the original study was passed.
Okay, and then my second question is with respect to the 30 properties that are identified in the report and that were referred to in your presentation, did those property owners receive direct notice of the housekeeping amendment?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Are there any other questions by members of council to Ms. Richardson? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Thank you, Ms. Richardson, for your presentation. I have a question under the changing agricultural uses, like the added value. And I did have an opportunity of touching base with Kira earlier today in regards to the process. Like if I have a farm and I have a barn, I just can't start having weddings. There is a process, and I'm just wondering if you could outline what the process would be for permits and, from safety regulations and building and everything else.
Right. So I think in that case, what we're doing right now in terms of the official plan amendment is to permit the use, and then we still need to put in place the appropriate zoning and things like that. So this is sort of the first step, and then we'll look at that through zoning. Haven't really given it much thought that much further, but I would think in terms of if someone were to do a wedding, they would probably require some sort of a special event permit or something along those lines. But that we're not quite at that stage yet, but we need to have the designation policies in place, and then we can sort of move forward with things.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for that explanation. I was pretty sure that was it. I just didn't want anybody to read this and think, okay, have a barn, I can have a wedding tomorrow. that there's more to it than what they're reading, and this is just the beginning of the process. The other thing in there, it talked about not having this added value to include cannabis operations in regards to it's agricultural and all that, but cannabis will be not being included in regards to the added value. Do you have any concern that they may challenge that their restriction is being different than other agricultural products?
I think that's probably premature. We're looking at doing a cannabis land use review right now. We're sort of in that process, so it's probably a bit premature. The other thing is that there is completely different legislation that's related to cannabis, so it sort of doesn't even come into play in this case. So we just wanted to be very clear that use was not something that we were looking at in terms of value added.
Thank you, that's all.
Any other members of council? So, Madam Clerk, have we received anything by way of mail in terms of comments since the report was issued? Okay, and since the town has initiated this particular housekeeping amendment, I'm going to presume that Ms. Richardson, your comments are reflective of the town's position on this from a staff perspective.
Yes, that's correct.
So, Mr. Butler, can you check to see if there's anyone in the waiting room that wishes to speak in favor of this particular application?
To your worship, I do see a few members of the public here. I did see some hands raised earlier, but they've been lowered when you were first talking. So, okay, one's coming up now. I'm going to bring this person in now. We have a Chris coming in.
So, Chris, you can unmute yourself, which you've just done. Could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Redekop. It's Chris Nutt. My address is 3584 Hill Street, Stevensville, Ontario.
Now that we see you, I can recognize you.
Yeah, you should have recognized me from the photo, but that's okay.
I didn't see the photo. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's all right. I just wanted to speak in favor of this. I think, thank you very much to Kira and Lindsay. I think this is something that has been a long time coming, something definitely that I was hoping to see the town move forward on. So I'm glad that we are. Just to give you guys some background on some research I did, there's 89 venues in Ontario that have barn weddings. The closest is in Port Colborne. The city of Caledonia has quite the comprehensive bylaw around what could be done, how many people, how many per year. So they have a pretty good one there. City of Port Colborne's bylaw, just for reference, is 6575, and it's special provision A19 that allows these for agro-tourism. I'm glad to see that the town of Fort Erie is moving forward. It's just another form of tourism that we can have for the town. And I think that since we have agricultural land that isn't of much use, this actually creates some potential new uses for land that would probably otherwise, or buildings that would probably otherwise be, just left to deteriorate. One thing I will note is when I was reading Port Colborne's, they do exempt zoning change for this from for their infill uses and agricultural uses in there from development charges. So, I'd like to put that forward as a consideration for the town, because if the buildings already exist and whatnot, there's no development really going on if somebody's just changing a use. So, but I just wanted to thank staff for all their hard work. They did a really good job, and I'm looking forward to the town passing this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nutt. Any members of council have any questions of our beloved Mr. Nutt, former councillor? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
Chris.
Good to see you too, sir.
Okay, Mr. Butler, anyone else in the waiting room that wishes to speak in favor of the application?
So any of the others that are in the waiting room, now would be your opportunity to raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak in favor of this application. And I am seeing one more, Your Worship. I'm going to bring in Matt Ricard. Matt, you should be able to unmute yourself and show your video if you wish. There we go. I think you're unmuted now, Matt.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mr. Ricard. Can you provide, presuming you're Mr. Ricard, can you provide us with your
Yeah.
address for the record, please?
2391 Cider Road, Stevensville. It's actually Bruce Rickard. Matt Rickard's my son. He signed in.
Perfect. That's why I asked.
Do you have video? I don't see.
We don't have your video. Have you located it on your device and tried to activate it?
I don't know why it wouldn't be working. Just maybe give us a second. Sorry about this. It's all new to us.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine.
Mr.
All this high-tech stuff.
Look like your video is on. I don't know if you have the cover over the webcam or something else.
Doesn't matter. Oh, you can hear me though, right?
We can hear you, so you
Yeah,
could make.
I don't know why the video is not working, but it's too. I don't know. Our internet out here isn't that great, but yeah, it's Bruce Rickard, 2391 Cider Road. We have a farm out here and a large old barn from 1865, and we've done nothing but try to promote and preserve the heritage and the history. There's a lot of history in this area, and that's our main goal, is just to keep these buildings standing. And I don't want to see another barn hit the ground. It's a gorgeous, beautiful barn, and we're very, very passionate about the property and the buildings. And we're very happy with this town of Fort Erie, the work they've done towards this. I think it's a great thing. We support everything our friend Chris has said. He's a really great guy. Well, I guess that's about it.
Perfect. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Ricard? If not, then thank you very much, sir. And your comments have been noted by staff.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Butler, anyone else, Mr. Butler?
Your Worship, I'm not seeing any others with their hands raised at this point.
Okay, so then perhaps we could ask if there's anyone who opposes the application or wishes to ask questions of council.
So if there is anyone else in the waiting room that wishes to speak, now would be your time to raise your virtual hand. I'm seeing no others, Your Worship.
Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move to the second public meeting for this evening, and this is the one that relates to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, 1912 Kenwood Street. The owners Matthew and Mary Silver, who I know are here this evening. So, Mr. Vanderveen, Daryl Vanderveen, you're going to be providing council with some background information?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just going to start sharing my screen. Okay, thanks, Mayor Redekop and members of council. I'm just going to start my presentation here. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment on 1912 Kenwood Street. This proposal will rezone the subject property to a site-specific neighborhood development ND zone that permits the use of 2 converted shipping containers for construction of a detached accessory structure to the residential dwelling. The proposed accessory structure is a carport intended for vehicle parking and storage. Notification of the December 7, 2020 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the November 12, 2020 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on November 9th, 2020. I'd just like to note that the report associated with this public meeting on tonight's agenda is being submitted as a recommendation report, as no objections were received from staff, external agencies, or members of the public. The subject property is located in the Gilmore neighborhood of the town of Fort Erie on the east side of Kenwood Street. The property is a through lot. It's located south of Bowen Road and also has frontage on Thompson Road. An existing residential dwelling is located on the subject property, and the proposed structure will function as an accessory building to the dwelling. The proposed structure will be constructed in the same location that 2 existing shipping containers are situated on the property. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings, Bowen Road, and industrial lands including a rail corridor. To the south, an existing industrial use, vacant residential land, and single detached dwellings along Thompson Road. To the east, a single detached dwelling, Thompson Road, and the town of Fort Erie's Greenwood Cemetery. To the west, single detached dwellings and vacant wooded residential land. The subject property is designated urban residential in the official plan. Lands designated as urban residential are intended for a variety of housing forms, such as single detached dwellings. The proposal to amend the zoning to facilitate construction of a new accessory structure to an existing single detached dwelling is consistent with the land use policies of the official plan. A small sliver on the southern edge of the property is designated environmental conservation. The proposed accessory structure is not located within this area. Schedule C of the town's official plan illustrates that woodlands over 2 hectares and provincially significant wetlands are located in the vicinity of the subject property to the southwest. These features are not on the property itself, and no negative impacts from this proposal are anticipated on these natural heritage features. The subject property is currently zoned Neighborhood Development ND zone. This zoning permits existing single detached dwellings and buildings, structures, and uses accessory thereto. This proposal involves the use of 2 converted shipping containers to construct a detached carport accessory to the residential dwelling on site. A zoning bylaw amendment is required, as the current zoning regulations only permit the use of 1 converted shipping container as an accessory structure. This proposed amendment will change the zoning of the property from neighborhood development zone to a site-specific neighborhood development zone that permits the use of 2 converted shipping containers for an accessory structure to the dwelling. The proposed structure meets all of the regulations in the zoning bylaw for accessory buildings, and no other special provisions are required. This is the proposed design concept for the accessory structure proposed as part of the zoning bylaw amendment. So 2 shipping containers will be encased in decorative cladding with sliding barn doors located in the front and rear. The space between the containers will accommodate vehicle parking. The containers themselves will also open inside and be used for storage. These elevations illustrate the decorative cladding on the sides of the structure as well as the sliding doors. A peaked roof will also cover the shipping containers and parking area within. This sketch represents a conceptual site plan. The proposed structure will be located north of the dwelling and will face Kenwood Street. The structure will be located in the same location that the 2 shipping containers on site are currently situated. The proposed structure meets the zoning bylaw requirements for setbacks and maximum lot coverage for accessory buildings to a dwelling. And this is looking into the subject property from the east from Kenwood Street. So visible in that image are the 2 existing shipping containers that will be integrated into this new building. And this is looking west into the property from Thompson Road. So the dwelling and the shipping containers are at the far end of the property from this vantage point. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Mr. Van der Veen? There being none, then Mr. Butler, could you see if either Mr. or Mrs. Silver wish to address council?
Yes, I will, Your Worship. I'll bring them in now.
Thank you.
It looks like you're unmuted, Mr. and Mrs. Silver.
Is our audio? Oh,
Your audio is good, and now your video is good.
okay.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Silver.
Good evening, Your Worship, and Council. Well, as Daryl had presented, that's essentially it. We wish to create a carport that's going to use two existing shipping containers as the structural basis. And we believe that it's going to look quite suitable for the neighborhood.
We're trying to make it look very suitable.
Yes.
Yes,
Any questions?
that's what I get to ask. Do any members of council have any questions?
Sorry, we're stepping on your lines.
Yes, we don't want me to be redundant for the time being. Okay, the report that was provided to council, I think was very clear. Mr. Van der Veen's presentation was very clear. We understand that you got in when this issue first arose at I think the end of last year. So doesn't look like there are any members of council that have any questions. So I'm going to let you off the hook, Mr. and Mrs. Silver, and we'll see if there's anyone that wishes to speak to us about this.
I would like to say one brief thing. And we've had a lot of very positive assistance from the town and councillors getting information and getting assistance, getting guided through this. We've been able to save money by not having to hire a professional consultant to guide us through this because of their assistance. And
we appreciate it very much.
We've only been in town for like 5 years, but we love this town.
Well, that's very nice to hear, and I'm sure staff appreciate your comments as well. So thank you. Okay, let's let you folks out, and we'll let Mr. Butler see if there's anyone else that wishes to speak. We're going to do either in favor or against at once because we understand there was a public open house and no one else came out. So is there anyone that wishes to address council with respect to this application?
Now would be the time to raise your virtual hands. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Okay, and it doesn't look like there would be.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, okay. So then if there's no one else that wishes to speak to council with respect to this public meeting, I'm going to declare the public meeting closed. And that is then going to take us to the consent agenda. Are there any reports that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, then can I have a mover for the consent agenda? Councillor Dubanow? Okay, does anyone have any questions with respect to any of the reports contained in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. In regards to PDS 61 2020, the comprehensive zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment, I was pleased to see that the concerns that were raised at the other meeting in regards to the distance from the corner for a driveway is not going to be changed. And I'm also pleased to see some of the changes in regards to the lot coverage with the how to put it, so that they can still put a patio in and things like that, but it's not going to affect the drainage. One of the things in there, it talked about that if someone was going to do this, it would most likely be a surface that would be, water could infiltrate through it. So therefore, it wouldn't really cause a drainage problem. And I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Dolge earlier about that. Could that not be part of it? That you can't just put in a 20 by 20, concrete slab, that if you're going to put it in, it has to be, has to allow water to infiltrate so that it doesn't cause a drainage problem and remove that area from like the green space. It's no longer green space, but at least it will still drain properly. That was one of my concerns there. But I am glad to see the concerns addressed. The other thing was in the CAO 25LC Land Committee minutes. I was glad
Hey,
to.
before you leave there, I think you had a question of Ms. Doltz, did you not?
If she wants to comment, her and I did have a discussion earlier about that.
You did raise the question, and I'd like to hear the answer. You may know it. I'd like to hear it.
Okay.
Through you to the councillor. Yes, so we did discuss it earlier, and what we can do is put in the zoning permeable surface would be required for that type of coverage. Otherwise, we would calculate it in the coverage if it was more of a hard surface type of material. And that way we address the drainage concerns. So we could bring that forward in the bylaw that'll be coming forward next to the next council meeting. And we can make that change just to clarify that it is a permeable surface.
Councillor Noyes, anything further on this particular report? Because rather than, this is always challenging. There may be others that wish to speak to this. I don't know. Are there that wish to speak to this report? So just for clarification, the issue about the daylighting triangle, the shortening of the distance, that isn't moving forward. Is that correct, Ms. Dolch?
That's correct. We have removed that from the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Noyes, back to you.
Yes, the next inquiry was of CAO 25, the Land Committee minutes. Again, I was glad to see that that Mr. Walsh brought up the drainage issue, and I just wanted to see if he wanted to comment on that in regards to problems with drainage issues in the urban areas.
This really had to do with plans of subdivision and that type of thing, those drainage plans being altered?
Yes, like where the swales are plugged and neighbors are having problems.
Mr. Walsh, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, the matter's referred to legal counsel, for an opinion on that. It's quite complicated, so surprisingly so.
And once you get the lawyers involved, it gets really complicated.
Shakespeare.
Councillor Noyes, did you want any further comment from Mr. Walsh with respect to that? It's outlined in the minutes.
Yes, it is outlined, but I wanted to thank him for bringing it up. And I think it's an important issue. I don't know about the other councillors, but I have concerns raised continually by neighbors who have problems with flooding from their neighbors. And it's a problem that doesn't seem to go away. And it's nice to have this looked at for the next steps.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
One, not on that issue. So the next one would be CS-21-2020 in regards to the third quarter financial report. And again, I did have a chance to talk to the director a little bit about this. In regards to all the money that was the funding that is being set aside either for emergency preparedness and into reserves, and that I was hoping that in some way, knowing this is a COVID year and all our taxpayers and our residents are going to have some difficulty with taxes and things, that could any of these dollars be put towards lowering the tax levy? And I'll let Mr. Jansen perhaps may want to respond.
Mr. Jansen, can you advise why the recommendation with respect to where these monies are to go?
Certainly, through you to Councillor Noyes. The intention is to transfer the funds aside in advance of the levy budget, which is coming up on February 3rd. So as we can begin drawing on that in 2021, where appropriate. We're using the emergency management reserve for a few of these because we're considering COVID-19 to be emergency related. So we can then draw on those fundings for temporary or medium-term needs related to COVID next year. We expect to have both revenue losses and increased expenses that'll be both direct and indirect in this case. So that'll place those funds in reserve and available to recommend with the 2021 budget.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, so really what you're saying, Mr. Jansen, is that instead of having to budget money for some of the things that we anticipate may arise related to COVID, this money will already be available because it's been put into the reserves.
That's correct.
And that's really what the intention of the provincial government was in terms of any funding that was provided. If there was excess, it was to be set aside to be used in 2021 if necessary.
That's right. They were pretty clear in their letter with the announcement that the funds should be applied towards 2021 needs.
Great. Any other members of council wish to address any of the reports so I'll go to Councillor Zanko and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question with regard to IS 43 2020, the award of tender for dead end water main replacement, through you to Mr. Walsh. First of all, I'm very happy to see this. I know that I've been asking about this for quite some time. But my question is, originally Buffalo Road, the end of Buffalo Road, I was told that they would have a water main replacement. Now they're not on this list, and I'm seeing that it's probably for a reason. Maybe there's a larger portion of Buffalo Road that is eventually going to have the water main replacement. I just wanted to get some clarification on that.
Sure,
You might not know that right now.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, off the top of my head, this was always the scope of the project. I know Buffalo Road does have a larger main on it. It is not a dead end main though. It loops through, is it McDonald down at that end? Regardless, it's not a dead end water main, and it would be its own separate project.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, do you have any idea when that might be addressed?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall seeing it in the 10-year program.
Councillor Zanko, back to you.
I think maybe I'll wait till inquiry by members and maybe ask for information then. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. In regards to the minutes, the land committee minutes, under other matters, number 4, we talk about being approached to purchase town-owned lands on Thompson Road. And then it goes on to say that the region said that the lands were likely wetlands and would not be allowed to be developed, but the company that wanted to buy them circled back, and they still want to know what the process would be to buy them. I'm a little confused as to if they wetlands, and if they are, why would we even sell wetlands? Because we know that, you know, they're going to come back later and try to remove the wetland designation.
Well, the recommendation is not to sell the lands, but Ms. Dolch, can you speak to this? And can you tell us which page again, Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, it's page 5.
Page 5 of the package?
No, page 5 of the minutes, I guess. Appendix 1, the minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, page 5, item 4.
Right. Yes, Ms. Dolch.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the councillor. So these properties in particular do contain wetland. It was discussed at the last land committee meeting in more detail. This was just to discuss it briefly at that meeting. We have looked at it. It is wetland. The recommendation was generally that we wouldn't sell these properties as they are covered in wetland. Obviously, it's a concern. We want to keep the environmental lands protected, And should the wetland be removed from these or lands adjacent to these lands, and including our lands by the province, at that time we would maybe consider selling those lots at that time. But right now, it is provincially significant wetland and should be protected, and we weren't inclined to sell it at this point.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. So the company that wanted to buy them, they've been notified that the town has no interest in selling?
Ms. Dolch?
Through to the councillor, yes, they have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors? Ms. Dolce, I wonder if you could just advise us where we are in terms of the encroachments on the road allowance, Burley Road near the lake. Where does that stand right now? It's referred to in the minutes on page 7 of the package, page 4 of the actual minutes.
So at this point in time, originally we sent out a letter requesting the encroachments be removed. The owner has contacted staff asking if there's an ability to keep, especially the grass area and things like that, and that he felt he put them in place and that it was a benefit to the community rather than something he's using because he had a fence. He has his own fence there. At this point in time, staff continue to follow up with that. And there was some discussion about perhaps putting benches in that area, things like that. At our last land committee or one land committee meeting, we're still looking into that a bit further, but at this point in time, the encroachments are still to be removed unless decided otherwise.
So this is a matter that will come back to land committee for further discussion?
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to call for the vote on the items in the consent agenda. All those in favor of the recommendations? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Planning and Development Services. And I know we just had a recent switch, and it's Councillor Dubanow. Then Councillor Dubanow, take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is now in session. We have no presentations or delegations this evening, but we do have 2 reports and a response to inquiry. So we'll start with the first report, PDS 58-2020. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor McDermott. That report is on the floor, which is the amendment to the Town of Fort Erie Official Plan Housekeeping Amendment. Any questions, comments by council? Your Worship.
Just one question, and that related to the request for comments from agencies, one of which is the region. They didn't get back to us. So is that because there wasn't adequate time for them to respond, or are there some other issues that staff is aware of?
Ms. Dolch?
Through to the mayor. We have had a couple meetings with the region recently, so we are working on. They had some questions with regard, not necessarily to the study, but our town policies that we're currently working with our consultant to address.
Your Worship.
That's fine. It's just that it would be helpful if we had more timely responses, I think. But thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other questions, comments from members of council? All right, so in that case, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Looks unanimous, so that's carried. So we'll move on to the next, which is PDS 59-2020, the proposed, oh, Your Worship.
I'm going to move this when you get to it.
Okay, sorry. PDS 59-2020, proposed zoning bylaw amendment to 1912 Kenwood Street. That's Matt Silver and Mary Silver, moved by Your Worship. So that's now on the floor. Any questions, comments from council? I see Councillor Lubberts' hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Looking at the Appendix 2 and the other ones, I'm just curious as to how are these at the end of the day, how is the entire structure going to be supported as far as its a foundation? Is it going to be slab on grade, or is there any kind of foundation that's going to be there? Because I'm a little concerned about two separate structures and then you're building in between them. Is it meeting building code?
Yeah. Mr. Vanderveen, did you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the specifics of like slab on grade as of this point. However, I will say part of the approval process will be that they go through site plan control. So we'll be conducting staff review at that stage. Plus, they'll also have to come in for a building permit. So our building division staff will ensure that everything's properly engineered and the proposed structure meets building code regulations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Did your worship?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment the property owners for doing what we had anticipated and hoped some people would do, which is come forward and try to have these sea containers become part of something that's more presentable within the communities. There are a lot of sea containers still in Fort Erie, and of course, COVID-19 has deterred bylaw enforcement from doing much enforcement with respect to these, but there are a lot of people that are going to be surprised to find out that they're going to have to move their storage containers unless they take some action such as this. And this will be an improvement in the neighborhood, I'm confident.
I agree, Your Worship. Any other members of council? All right, so we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Looks like everyone's hands up, so that carries. And we'll move on now to the, actually, just a quick question. Should we handle the response to inquiry first, or should we ask, okay. So in that case, we'll move on to the response to inquiry. That is an inquiry by Councillor Noyes at the November 2nd, 2020 Council and Committee meeting regarding information on an illegal cannabis operation on Winger Road. And I believe that that is Ms. Dolce's to read out.
Thank you. So the response to that inquiry is the Town of Fort Erie Bylaw Enforcement Division received a public complaint regarding an illegal cannabis grow operation on a vacant lot located on Winger Road. Based on the information relayed by Fort Erie Bylaw Enforcement, a search warrant was executed by various police agencies at the property October 15, 2020. As the matter is before the courts, minimal details can be provided at this time. Fort Erie Bylaw, in collaboration with Fort Erie Building Department and Fort Erie Fire Department, are addressing several peripheral issues associated with the illegal grow operation, including building code matters, zoning matters, and fire code matters.
Thank you, Ms. Dolce. Councillor Noyes, did you have any questions or comments regarding the response?
Yes, Councillor Dubanow, I do. In regards to, I think it's important for council to know what went on this particular site, and I do respect the fact that there's a legal issue here and some illegal grow up, but I think it's important for council to have some details. And understanding that, I guess there's two ways that council can be made aware what actually happened at this particular site. One is through a confidential memo, or else going into closed session to discuss a legal issue. I don't particularly have a preference one way or the other, but I do think it's important for council to realize what happened it's less than a mile from my home, and this is probably not the only case in Fort Erie. So I think it's important for council to know the details.
I tend to agree with you, Councillor Noyes. I'm just wondering procedurally, did you want to move that, or did you want to discuss it with staff and go forward from there?
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. I did have an opportunity to touch base with Ms. Dolce today. Like to me, like, again, if it can be done, if the information can be provided to us in a confidential memo with the details that we can't discuss in public, or if she feels that, or if it's necessary to go into a private, and a separate meeting, a closed meeting. I don't have a preference one way or the other, and perhaps we need some legal advice on which way would be the best to handle it, but I do think it's important for council to know the details.
So on a point of order, Chair, I think what we can do is staff can determine whether they have a preference one way or the other. And if it's determined that we can go into closed session, that can be arranged for next Monday evening when we have our council meeting. If staff decides that they could circulate a confidential memo, and some of the information, I understand it, may not even be available for staff to provide if there are some matters before the court, particularly if they're not matters that we would be prosecuting. But why don't we provide staff with the opportunity to consider how they will provide whatever information they can to council. If it's a closed session, well, then it would be next Monday evening. If it can be a confidential memo, it'll be then. And if Councillor Noyes still has questions, she can raise those as well next Monday evening.
That sounds good for me if staff are agreeable to that. Is Councillor Noyes, you that sound good?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. Did any other members of council have any questions or comments about the response? Okay, so we'll then move on. We'll open the floor to any other questions of new business or inquiries. All right, I saw his worship's hand up first, and then I'll go to Councillor Noyes.
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to get something on the record so that the public has an understanding of what's happening with Graber Avenue, because right now, and maybe this can be confirmed by, I don't know whether it be the clerk or Ms. Dolch, but right now we've been awaiting some advice from the lawyer that's been consulted relative to the title. It's a complicated issue, and I'm wondering if, I know that Mr. Cookett is the one that's been dealing with the lawyer and he's not available this evening. I wonder if Ms. Dolch or the clerk would have any background information as to when we might expect to hear from the lawyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have any takers? I see the clerk's hand up.
As I understand it from the law clerk, that she has reached out again to our legal counsel. And I believe he had indicated last that he should have something to us by the end of this week.
Your Worship?
No, that's fine. I know that there are many people that are anxious in that neighborhood. And so I've communicated with some of them to assure them that we're waiting for the lawyer and it's still on our radar, but they want to be anxious. So thank you.
I've gotten phone calls as well, so I appreciate the question, Your Worship. I'll move on to Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. My inquiry is regarding the sign bylaw, and I know many of us probably have been questioned about the removal of some signs, whether they're personal, third party, whatever. I wasn't on council in 2015 when the sign bylaw was changed. And I do see that it's pretty all-encompassing for different things, but I'm wondering if the intent of the change at that time was to prevent signs like Save the Hospital, Save the Beach. When I was on council, there were thousands of those signs around. And now in this case, it was no grow up. Or when, Save the Water, and I see quarry signs in different places, if that was the intent of this bylaw, or perhaps it's too encompassing and there can be some exceptions. And I'm just wondering if how we'd go about looking at that to see if give the public an opportunity of expressing their opinion without breaking a bylaw. And I do appreciate that the bylaw officer was doing exactly what she was told to do, what she had to do. There was a complaint and she followed the letter of the law. So I do want to recognize that also.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. It's actually an answer I'd be interested in because I had to protect our water sign on my lawn for a little bit. Ms. Dolch, did you want to take this?
Sure, thank you. Through you to the councillor. So I'm going to just first talk about the signs. They were removed because they were in the town road allowance. It doesn't matter whether personal, third party, however you want to define it. The bylaw is very clear. If it's in the road allowance, they are removed based on a complaint. In terms of the difference between personal and third party sign, personal signs are doing a personal announcement or congratulatory message. Whereas a third party is more, I'm sorry, I have the definitions. It's just information that's not related to the lot. And that's why the third party applies a little bit better to this situation. In terms of the change in 2014, I did go back, and it was changed. Personal sign was defined in that in the 2014 bylaw. There was some minor changes to the wording only, nothing major, just really clean up. But when it really changed was from the 99 bylaw from 1999. So we had bylaw 4299, which didn't define personal signs at all, nor did it detail. It had a third party sign, but it was entirely different definition. So I would need to go back. If you need an answer to that, I'd need to go back to see if I could find that 99 report where the 2014 report where we changed it, the 99 bylaw, to see why it was changed at that point in time, if there's any explanation. I can also look in the file. There may be some correspondence or other things that we may have had when Mr. Stevenson changed the bylaw at that time.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow, and thank you, Ms. Dolch, for your explanation. Again, I don't know if it's necessary to give us a whole history from 1999 to 2004 to 2050. I think the purpose of my inquiry is the sign bylaw that we currently have reflect what we would hope to see. Like, again, Councillor Dubanow, you brought up that you had save the water. I know that there's quarry signs. I know that there's, save our school at some point. They were out there. I don't know if that was the purpose of the bylaw, or if perhaps we need to kind of look at it and maybe tweak it a little bit to allow those type of signs to go on.
Yeah.
Personal property.
Ms. Dolch, I'm just wondering if you can clarify, are they allowed, and it was an issue of the road allowance that caused these particular ones to be removed due to a complaint?
That's correct. It's because they were in the road allowance that they were removed. Third-party signs are allowed, but you do need a permit for them. You do need a sign permit for the third-party signs. So you are permitted to have them. You just need the actual permit. In terms of, and I know there's a lot of debate between whether it's third-party or personal sign. If it's a personal sign, and again, it is a congratulatory kind of sign. So, but in case that was a sign somebody was looking at, that can be on personal property for 3 days, but then has to be removed.
So, and just briefly, if I had a protect our water sign on my lawn, which is a third-party sign, I technically require a permit for that?
Through our sign bylaw, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor Noyes, did you have anything else?
Well, Councillor Dubanow, not only would you need a permit, you would need $198.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, for that sign. So again, I'm wondering whether we should kind of look at the sign bylaw to see if that's exactly what we want the intent to be. And again, these no grow off signs, they would have been illegal if they were on their own property, not on the town property. If there was a complaint, it could have been, because number one, they didn't have a permit either, so they would have been removed regardless of whether they were on the town property or on their own. They were not legal under our current bylaw. So I just think we need to kind of look at that to see if that's exactly our intent.
Yeah, I saw his worship's hand up. I'll go to him.
Yeah, it's on this topic, and I would appreciate it if staff would circulate to members of council the signed bylaw so we can take a look at it in case anybody wishes to bring a motion, a notice of motion forward at the next meeting, because I'm embarrassed to say that I was the mayor in 1999 and I was the mayor in 2014 or 15. Well, 15. If it was 2014, that's good. But it seems a little overbearing, and I get it. I get that these signs were on the road allowance. I drive on that road not daily, but almost daily, and was a little surprised that there would be a complaint about them, number one. And number two, we expect the residents to cut the lawn and maintain the road allowance in front of their house. I would have thought that there might have been a little different approach. I did have communication with Ms. Dolch, and she was very informative and provided me with all the information that I didn't want to hear, except the 1999 one. I think that comes under the category, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I'm thinking that, you know, residents should be allowed to express their personal views on their own property. If it's a small sign, whether it says protect our water, save the beach, whatever. I've even seen signs, and I'm sure all of you have seen signs that say slow down, which are, and some of them I'm confident are on the road allowance. But the point is, they're an expression of personal belief. And when I think of all the signs that are across this town that I know aren't complying, and nobody has perhaps made a complaint, I just find it unfortunate that we're having our bylaw people having to enforce a complaint on these little signs, which it's just unfortunate, because as Councillor Noyes says, the bylaw officer doing her job. And maybe we should, I think, have this circulated. We can all take a look at it. Maybe there's something better that we can do to ensure that our residents can at least express themselves in a reasonable, what appears to be a reasonable fashion. The idea that you have to have a permit to do that on your own yard, I don't think I would. If I supported it before, I'm thinking I don't support it anymore. Thank you, Chair.
No, and I appreciate your comments, Your Worship. I'm not sure I could ever say it's a good idea to charge $200 to put a small little sign. I wasn't even aware that I was violating the bylaw when I had to protect our water sign on my lawn, and now, you know, so we'll just leave it there. Did any other members of council have any question or new business or inquiries this evening that they wanted to raise? All right, so in that case, I will, Planning and Development Services is closed for the evening. I'll hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
You didn't do business status report.
My apologies. Any questions or comments regarding the business status report? Thank you, Your Worship.
So I had a question about the business status report.
Yeah.
Are all of the anticipated reports coming forward on January 11th actually going to come forward, or some of those tentative?
Ms. Dolch?
To the mayor, some of them are tentative, only because we're waiting on some information and other things, and some are committee related.
Right. Because that's 10 reports just for planning. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it will be pared down most likely.
The chair appreciates that. Your Worship?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping me on my toes. And in that case, I will close Planning and Development Services. And now I will actually hand the chair back over.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Councillor Dubanow. That takes us to Infrastructure Services. And I take it that with the change in chairs, that's you, Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We have no presentation or delegations. We have no reports. Is there any new business or inquiries? Councillor Zanko and Councillor Noyes. Councillor Zanko?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Through you to Mr. Walsh, I just wanted to know if perhaps you could provide some timelines with regard to Lakeside Road. Just some of the residents are questioning. We did approve the design work back in 2017. I'm sure you can remember that we rushed the design work. And now, you know, we're headed into 2021 and still there hasn't been any work done on the road. I know that the design work has been complete, and I believe the tender is being posted. But just as far as, you know, why it took so long, I guess some of the questions are, and I'm not really too sure how to respond. So I was wondering if that would be possible.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the councillor, I'd prefer to, it's a long matter, and I'd prefer to summarize everything in a response to council inquiry or a memo.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Back in January.
Excellent. And just one other question through you, Councillor Lubberts, to Mr. Walsh, and this probably is the same thing. Maybe you could get back to me. But I'm just curious as to the lower portion of Buffalo Road. If you've ever driven down it, it's terrible. It's in really, really bad condition. There's, you know, although it's a very small portion of road, there is a number of houses there, primarily newer houses. And I know I was told that, and it may not be a main water main replacement, but I know that I was told that they would be getting the resurfacing work done. And I know this because it was at the time when Dominion Road was being repaved, and I was asking if the region could perhaps work with us on paving that little small portion as well. So I was just wondering if you can get back to me on that portion of the road, whether it's you know, a larger main water main replacement, or if there's some resurfacing going to be done. But I know I was assured that it would be in the future, and I know I told the residents that years ago, and their road is just worse and worse every single month, basically.
Mr. Walsh?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the residents' angst down there. It's not the best road, certainly. I'll follow up in January with timeframes on work.
Perfect, thank you. And that was everything.
Okay, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. I recently had a few inquiries from residents that live in some of the older communities, the older urban areas here, regarding the need for improved lighting. They do see lighting in the new subdivisions as being much more than what they currently have. And it's not just for the residents who live immediately in that particular neighborhood, but it's also for the people who walk from one area to another area. So I know that there's a bylaw, not a bylaw, but you can request an additional light pole, but if you have to pay for it, et cetera, and the residents have to kind of agree to it and all that. But I'm just wondering if there's any plan to upgrade some of the older urban areas where the lighting is lacking, particularly with our walkable community plan. Proper lighting is a safety issue.
Mr. Walsh?
And I did have a chance to talk to Mr. Walsh about that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So our current policy for urban areas, existing urban areas, is poles on the corners. We do have other poles that have been, or lights that have been installed primarily through development. New developments have a higher level of service. They have specific lighting criteria that the developer must meet. So it is brighter than our existing areas. Generally, the town will pay for new lights if there's a safety issue. We can do studies to determine a whole bunch of parameters. And there's also a process for the request of new lighting, which you've outlined, and everything's outlined in our lighting policy that was upgraded or updated when we went to the LED Cobra head fixtures a number of years ago. So that's how you get new lights. Is there a program to install new lighting throughout town? No, there's not, is the short answer to that.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Bruce, and thank you, Mr. Walsh, for that explanation. But should we have a program to look at the safety features? Like if we're really encouraging walkable communities, we want people to walk from point A to point B, we have to make sure that there's sufficient light from point A to point B. And I think some of the older urban areas, there's insufficient light, and many of these areas also don't even have sidewalks. So I would think that there may be areas where the safety is an issue and it should be addressed.
And I agree with you. If safety is an issue, it should be addressed. So if residents would like to bring forward specific areas, we'll be happy to look at them through the traffic coordinating committee.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you very much.
Any other inquiries? Seeing none, that moves us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Mayor Redekop, I'll turn the chair back over to you.
Very fine job, Councillor Lubberts.
Thank
I must
you.
commend you on your first foray as the chair of that committee. That takes us into corporate and community services, and that would be Councillor McDermott.
Quick one where isn't it Councillor Butler now? Wasn't Councillor?
Well, no, so there was internal discussion, and Councillor Butler has deferred for the time being. So it's still Councillor McDermott, and as soon as he unmutes, we'll be able to hear what he has to say.
My apologies, Your Worship.
Not at all.
Thank you, Your Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports. Are there any new business inquiries? Your Worship.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and perhaps Mr. Jansen can provide some commentary, just a bit of an update on where we are with respect to our application for disaster relief as a result of the October 31st, 2019 storm that caused damage in several locations. I understand there are 4 components to the application, and just maybe a brief update from Mr. Jansen as to where we are on that.
Mr. Jansen?
Sure, through you, Chair, to Mayor Redekop. We did submit an application at the end of February of 2020. We've been in dialogue with the province throughout the year. There were some delays with them processing a request, but we did have a meeting with them approximately 2 weeks ago to try and move that along. They've requested some additional information that we're happy to provide them. So Infrastructure Services is looking up some of that information to submit to them. There were indications that that it may still take another year or 2 to process that. So that was a bit surprising for us. And the initial estimates were that we would have some response in the fall of this year. Of course, COVID has changed many things, and this would be one of them. So we're hopeful that once they have all the additional information they've requested, that we'll be able to move forward with that. There may be some negotiations on the amounts on the accounting side, just understanding what the prior state prior to the storm was that might result in some adjustments. But I think that's about all I have for right now. Yep.
Just to follow up, if I might, Chair, my understanding is that this application needs to be processed by the provincial government in order for there to be a disaster area recognized by the province, and that has some implications for private property owners as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 2 separate programs, the MDRA is the Municipal Disaster Relief Assistance Program, and the DRAO is the other program. I believe there's still maybe some information on our website. Those are separate processes. Even for the MDRA submission, I don't think we've properly received formal confirmation of the event meeting all the criteria. They did visit the town immediately following the event, and I think they seemed agreeable. And so I think we still are waiting for that determination as well for both of those.
If I might further, Chair, my understanding is that the application itself consists of 4 components. One is the Erie Beach or Waverly Beach Boardwalk. Another one is a water outlet connected with Colony Road. One is Bay Beach, where there was some damage done to the new park that's there. And then finally, Point Avenue Road. Did I get that correctly?
I believe that's all of them. There was also some additional operating costs for initial cleanup as well. We do have some internal briefing notes that I can share with council again, just to refresh everyone on the major components of the submission.
And finally, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that the total request for funding is around $7.7 million. Is that correct? Is that the ballpark?
Yes.
And then I guess finally, just for members of council, staff is trying to arrange a telephone call for me with the minister responsible for this since the delays. Mr. Jansen has been very diplomatic in his responses to these questions. He doesn't want to offend anyone, nor do I, but we're now more than a year beyond this. There is some background information that Mr. Jansen has been quite generous in not making public with respect to this. And so it's really not, it's really been on a meandering journey, this application, and it needs to be dealt with. Because if we can't receive any comment from the provincial government with respect to the status of whether this is an application that is going to be considered in its entirety or partially, then these are issues that the taxpayers of the town of Fort Erie are going to have to take on, because these are all fairly prominent locations within our municipality, and one cannot leave the Waverly Beach boardwalk in the condition that it's in. One could not leave the Bay Beach damage as it was. One has to deal with the Point Abano Road reconstruction at some point. We need to deal with this. And thank you very much, Mr. Jansen, for your comments and your diplomacy. And thank you, Chair, for your indulgence on this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything on the business status report? I'll hand it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. That was very efficient, I must say. Scheduling of meetings. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Community Gaming Development Corporation Board of Directors are going to have a meeting this Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. It'll be handled through Zoom. I unfortunately will not be able to attend because that's our water wastewater budget. Also on, just looking at my calendar here, it looks like December 16th at 10:30, we've got a street naming and wayfinding committee meeting. That's going to be handled through Zoom as well. And just briefly, I think I might have neglected to mention this. We had a circle route committee meeting at the region today, and we had a great presentation by the Niagara Freewheelers Bicycle Club. And through the discussions we had, I'm hoping to have them give a similar presentation to council. It was very enlightening, and I think with the work that we're doing with active transportation and promoting that in the community, that it would be very beneficial for them to present to council here. So I'm working on that. I can't recall if I had mentioned that at one of our previous meetings, and I just wanted to ensure that didn't get forgotten.
That's good. Thank you very much, Councillor Dubanow. It sounds like you had more fun with your regional meeting than I did today with the region's audit committee. So good for you. Any other meetings scheduled that anyone wishes to announce? If not, then Councillor Dubanow, why don't I go back to you to adjourn this meeting?
Yes, Your Worship. I will move the adjournment. Go Bills, go.
All those in favor?